So I'm just getting back from court from dealing with Dave's bond hearing today, and what an absolute disaster this turned out to be. In fact, this went absolutely nothing like I expected it to go, and it even almost ended up with me getting locked up myself. I'm going to tell you all about this, but I just really want to give you the play-by-play of how this entire day went, considering the fact that I couldn't bring my phone, any kind of camera inside the courthouse at all. The first thing that I want to start by saying is that nobody even had any idea that today was Dave's bond hearing. Dave's lawyer did not try to contact me. Dave's lawyer didn't even contact him to let him know that he had a bond hearing today. In fact, it was when I found out that his bond hearing was today, and that was only thanks to some really awesome supporters and diehards for After Prison Show, Jersey B, APS Beer Grunt, Big Steen. These individuals have really been helping out with the entire Dave situation. But they did some digging and were able to find that Dave's court date was in fact today. They relayed that information to me. Again, if it wouldn't have been for them, nobody would have even known he had a bond hearing today, because his lawyer didn't even contact me to let me know that bond hearing was today. When in fact I have been in contact with Dave's lawyer and told him that I wanted to go to court for him as a character witness to try to do anything that I possibly could to help Dave get this bond today. But regardless of all that, we found out that the bond hearing was this morning. It was at 10 o'clock. I went to the bond hearing and I couldn't bring my phone in there to film this. I really wish I could have, because it was fucked up. I walk into the courthouse, I find Dave's name on the docket. He's in courtroom 3, that's where this bond hearing is supposed to take place at. I go into the courtroom, I'm waiting, I'm trying to find Dave's lawyer. Dave's described a little bit about what his lawyer looks like, so that's what I have to go on as far as trying to find out who this guy is. I had even texted Dave's lawyer on the way to court, letting him know that I was going to be there and to be looking for me. But I walk into courtroom 3, right into the middle of a case that's being proceeded over right there. And there's this young kid who's sitting in there. He's facing a probation violation. This kid brought back 2 additional charges. I'm pretty sure they were both for drugs. He was already on probation for a long list of charges. And this judge, instead of actually sentencing him to prison or any additional time, he actually sentenced him to a drug program, which I think was like for 90 days. So he was going to get released tomorrow to go straight to this drug program. And I really thought that was a good thing. This was the judge Dave was to go in front of, so I was already seeing the first case play out, and it seemed like this judge was actually pretty fair. After that case wrapped up, they actually read off the 10 o'clock docket. There was a ton of people who were on this docket. I felt like I was going to be in there all day, because Dave was actually the last person listed on this docket. They took a short recess, came back, and actually then moved some of the cases to another courtroom. I was in courtroom 3, I think, 3 or 4. Whichever courtroom I was in, they ended up moving Dave's case to another courtroom, him and another guy. So at that point, I then went over to the other courtroom. I'm waiting in there, but mind you, while moving Dave's hearing to another courtroom, this means that he's going to be going in front of a different judge. I go into this other courtroom. It's like me and a woman were the only 2 people sitting in there. There was a guy in there that I thought was a defense attorney that I thought was working with Dave's lawyer, because I did think that I saw Dave's lawyer at this point. Still haven't had a chance to talk with this guy. But I asked this guy, I said, hey, do you know such and such? He said, yeah, he just checked in. He's going to be in here momentarily. I was like, okay. Well, at least now I've pinpointed that the guy I thought was Dave's lawyer was in fact Dave's lawyer, and now I'm on the lookout for this guy. This individual that I did ask about Dave's lawyer, however, he was not a defense attorney though. Turns out he was a prosecutor, and also the prosecutor who was going to be proceeding over Dave's bond hearing. And real quick, let me just throw this in there. There was nothing nice or sweet or good about this guy. He was very adamant, very serious, and most certainly had a heavy hand in how things were going to end up turning out for Dave with this bond hearing. And also for me as well, with the fact that, again, I almost got locked up myself in the process of all of this. With the fact that Dave's hearing was moved over to this other courtroom, there was one other case that was moved over as well. And that case ended up going before Dave's bond hearing. And this guy who was locked up, his situation was absolutely fucking ridiculous. But this guy was locked up because of a probation violation as well. And the crazy damn thing about it is this guy was actually released from probation. He was done with probation. Probation said, hey, look, you're done. But this guy did owe restitution as well as court fines. And what restitution is say you steal something from somebody, it's valued at like $2,000, however much it's valued at. Well, when you get found guilty of that charge, not only do you have to serve time with that, but you will also owe restitution as well. Meaning whatever you stole that was valued at whatever, you're going to end up paying for that thing that you stole at the same time. But when owing restitution, you're not supposed to be released from probation. But probation in this case actually made a mistake and released this guy. Well, because of the fact that this guy still owed this restitution, they issued a warrant for his arrest after he had already been released from probation. And they went to the last known address that they had for this guy. Mind you, again, when released from probation, you have to check in with nobody at that point. But they went to the last known address for this guy, couldn't find him. So now that was an additional thing that they were tacking on as well. It's called an absconding because probation can no longer locate you, which again does not make any sense because they had already released this guy. Needless to say, this guy got locked up. While locked up, ended up paying off all of that restitution. And while his violation hearing was being heard, they just threw it out. They said, look, you know, this is crazy. You're locked up. You've paid off what you need to pay off. You were released from probation. That was probation's fault for releasing you in the first place. And that's how it played out for this guy. His case was thrown out. I just think to myself, how long did he have to sit in jail because probation made a fucking mistake? You know, he probably been sitting in there for a month, a few months. Who the hell knows? Probably lost his job in the process of this. I mean, I'm just thinking really crazy things. But more importantly, I'm thinking of the fact of how this case just played out. Again, there's only 2 hearings in this courtroom. This guy's and then Dave's. So with the fact that the judge was very favorable in this guy's situation, I was hoping the same thing was going to happen during Dave's hearing. But unfortunately, that was not the case at all. That hearing wrapped up and now it was time for Dave's hearing. But Dave's lawyer's still not in here. We take another short recess. I go out into the hallway. I'm looking for this guy. I finally see him as he's trying to hurry up and get into this courtroom. And I'm telling him, hey, look, I'm Joe Guerrero. I'm the character witness here for Dave. Yeah, sure. I'm going to get you on the stand immediately. Like, doesn't even really ask me any questions at all. We have no game plan going into this except for the game plan that I put into this. Going into this myself, getting the screenshots of all of the awesome comments and the fact that Dave turned himself in. I mean, I feel like I literally did more work in this case than Dave's damn lawyer did. I'm a convicted felon on probation myself. They call for Dave. Dave is actually ushered into the courtroom in a fucking wheelchair, and then the hearing proceeds. The very first thing this prosecutor said out of his mouth is, this is a bond hearing. We oppose bond in this situation. So with that being said, I already knew we were facing an uphill battle. Dave's lawyer gets up, hasn't really been in contact with Dave. This is evident by the fact that he really doesn't even know what to say. So were you working? Where were you living? Can you tell us why you need a bond? I mean, you're basically getting to know Dave right there during this bond hearing. Dave, I guess, is doing the best that he can. I'm not sure if Dave is as nervous as I am in this situation, but I have to tell you this, and this is very real. This is the very first time that I've been inside of a courtroom since I was sentenced to 7 years and went to prison myself. I'm in here about to have a fucking meltdown, panic, and anxiety attack. I am really losing my shit in this courtroom, trying as hard as I possibly can to keep myself together. But imagine going into a courtroom again after the last time that you've been into a courtroom was during a time when they sent your ass to prison for almost a decade. It's not an easy thing to do at all. Dave's lawyer goes through this little mundane routine about why Dave should get a bond. I mean, really, he's not selling this at all. I know they're about to call me onto the stand. I, again, am trying to keep it together. And I know at this point I have to do what his lawyer is not doing in this case. And I have to actually fight for Dave my goddamn self. And that's what happens. They called me to the stand, asked me for my name, asked me where I live, asked me what I do, and from there, I just go to work. My name is Joe Guerrero. I live in Chesapeake. If released today with a bond, Dave would reside with me. That's okay with me. Not only would he reside with me, he would also work for me with a show that I have created called AfterPrisonShow on YouTube. I understand that saying that Dave would work doing some sort of a YouTube show probably sounds ridiculous, but I have to say this as well. This is a channel that has almost 500,000 people who tune in because they are either inspired, educated, enlightened, or motivated by the things that we do here with After Prison Show. After Prison Show was created to showcase what it is like for individuals who are coming home from prison or incarceration and the struggles that they face. One of the most important struggles being addiction. Addiction being something that plagues our nation and something that I personally feel we incarcerate way too many people for. Dave violated his probation because of the fact that he was in a detox program when another probation officer from another city did not know this. He did not bring back a single charge. He took it upon himself to enter into a detox facility to get the treatment that he needed. And since then, he's been clean and has been a major part of what I do with After Prison Show. Add to that I have screenshots right here that are from a video we did with Dave where he actually came and turned himself in to face this situation like a man, where over 250,000 people have watched and 16,000 people have liked this video. Once I got done saying everything that I could possibly say, I mean, I was almost out of breath by the time I got done pleading my case for Dave. The prosecution stood up and he said to me, he said, so Dave's been staying with you, right? He has. He's also been working with me as well. Have you been giving him drug tests? And this is probably where I said the one thing that I regret, because it was kind of an asshole thing to say, but I did say, no, I'm not a probation officer. No further questions, Your Honor. I was sent back to the grandstands to see how the rest of this was going to play out because my part was over. I had done everything I felt I possibly could do. And it was then where the prosecution stood up basically with an AK-47 and just began shooting at Dave. Your Honor, again, prosecution opposes bond in this situation due to the fact that this individual has an extensive criminal history. It literally took the prosecution about 5 minutes to read Dave's entire criminal history, which for the majority of that was 10 or 15 years ago. And also the fact that Dave has had a failure to appear in the past. And a failure to appear is when you have a court date and you don't show up for that court date. And that is one of the biggest negatives that you can have going into a bond hearing. He also went on to say that it doesn't matter that Dave was in a treatment program because nobody was keeping tabs on Dave at that point after he got done. So nobody could say with fact that Dave hadn't been using. I really wanted to get up and object right there at that point like I'm a fucking lawyer. Objection, Your Honor. You can go back and look at every After Prison Show video that features Dave in it, and I mean, it's not a drug test, but you can clearly see if an individual is on drugs or not. I most certainly can tell, and I'm sure quite a few other people could tell as well. But the final nail in the coffin that sealed Dave's fate was the fact that the prosecution said, and with this violation he's facing, the guidelines on this violation are 1 to 2 years. The judge listened to all of this. He took a minute to think about these things, and then he basically just began to reiterate everything that the prosecution said before delivering his verdict, where he said that he did not feel bond was the right thing to do during this hearing. Dave did not get a bond. And when I heard no bond, I was already standing up in my seat and I said, probably a lot louder than I should have said, this is some bullshit. And the judge looked at me and he said, one more outburst out of you and I'm going to hold you in contempt of court. And as he was saying this to me, my back was to him and I was walking out of the courtroom. I tried today. I really did. We did not have the certificate from Dave completing the detox program because his lawyer has not made the phone call to get that. I most certainly cannot make that phone call. It has to be a lawyer who does that. Had we had that paperwork, it probably wouldn't have even made any difference anyways. The way the prosecution was during this hearing, I don't think there was anything we could have done better to try to get a different outcome during this bond hearing. But it would have been nice to feel like I was not the only one who was going to bat for Dave today. And to be honest, that's pretty much what I felt like. I'm sorry. I tried my best.